Dear students, welcome back. Now we shall discuss the second unit of Managerial Economics 22 MBA 26 about demand analysis or law of demand. In this unit, we will be discussing about law of demand, exceptions to the law of demand, elasticity of demand, classification of price, income and cross elasticity, advertising and promotional elasticity of demand. So these are the different types of elasticity of demand, uses of elasticity of demand for managerial decision making, and measurement of elasticity of demand, law of supply, elasticity of supply, and the last concept is demand forecasting, its meaning, significance, methods of demand forecasting. Before we start, let us understand what is demand. Very common word we will be using in our regular daily life, that is, a demand is an effective desire as it is backed by willingness to pay and the ability to pay the price of the commodity. That is, it is an effective desire by a consumer or a customer and backed by willingness to pay and ability to pay. These two are very important because when an individual has a desire to buy something, at the same time they should have that willingness to pay and ability to pay. So ability to pay towards that is very important. So that is by paying some amount, that is price for the commodity at a particular point of time. So this the such process or that situation we call as demand. An effective demand will always be attributed with a price and a particular point of time, so which will be expressed at a particular point of time. So it is the quantity of a commodity which consumers are willing to buy at a given price for a particular unit of time. So this is the definition of demand. Now let us understand types of demand. So here we have different types like direct and derived demand. Direct demand is, say for example, I want to buy a car, a new car has come into the market, so I have that desire to buy a new one, and I plan to buy that. So by analyzing the price or its trend or its the usage, durability, mileage, so many different factors that we estimate, and once I feel it is worth of buying, then definitely I plan to buy, provided I should be ready to pay and I should buy within some point of time. So that is a direct demand, so which has come out, which has been expressed by an individual. Derived demand is, so which is derived by because of something, someone, or maybe because of some situation. Say for example, I want to write an exam, so for writing exam I need a pen, that is a derived demand. So like that we have different types: recurring and replacement demand. Recurring demand is, once we buy some commodity and we use it again, we are ready to buy, we have to buy that. So that is repeated buying, repeated demand for any commodity, no. So that is recurring. Or any services, we daily we take different public transportation services, or we buy many things, vegetables or fruits or groceries. So these are the recurring demands. And the next one is complementary and competing demand. Complementary, like we buy a car, a two wheeler, then definitely to run that we have to purchase the petrol for that or a diesel for that. So that is complementary. And competing, so like that, so where we look for different substitutes while buying any commodity, looking at its price or your behavior, taste and preferences, or the buying pattern of the others in the market, or looking at the new product substitutes, like that. And demand for perishable and durable goods, individual and market demand. So these are the different types of demand. And here we have different determinants of demand. So what are the reasons, what causes the expression of this demand? So here the determinants of such demand are mainly the price of the product, because the demand is expressed maybe due to the price. Maybe you feel the price is less now, or sometimes though the price is more, the product is good, or again you have the capacity to buy that, that is your income may permit you to buy, that is income of the consumer, price of related goods. Suppose if the price of some the regular good which you are using is going to be increased, then definitely you look for the alternative one, the substitute one. And suppose if that price is less, then definitely you buy that one instead of your regular good. Then taste and preferences, then advertising. Definitely today the promotional activities or marketing, it has a lot of influence, impact on the customers. That's the reason the companies invest more on the promotional activities. Then consumers expectation of future income and price, looking at your maybe increase in price in future, you may plan to invest your income on some other products or services, say for example buying of apartment or a building or a plot land, like that. Then population growth of economy, consumer credit. So these are the different determinants of a demand. So looking at all this, we can sum up the demand as a demand function. So here we have an expression for demand function. When the relation between demand and its determinants are expressed mathematically, it is referred to as a demand function. That is, demand for a product, that is x, can be written as dx, and it is a function of different determinants like price of the commodity. Let us express that as x, price of x, px, then income of consumer y, price of related, that is substitutes of complements commodities as po, then taste and preferences of consumer as t, advertising as a, future expectations as ef, and economic growth n. So this we can mathematically express in the form of a function, mathematical function, that is dx is equal to function of px, y, po, t, a, e, f and n. So these are the various determinants which acts on the demand. So that we call as demand function, or it can also be expressed in the equation form as dx is equal to a plus b 1p plus 2b 2y plus b 3po plus b 4t plus b 5a, where a is a constant and b1 b2 b3 b4 b5 are the coefficients of each of the determinants of demand. Now coming to an important concept of demand analysis, that is law of demand. Recognizing the fact that price of the product is the single most important variable of a product's demand, the law of demand has been proposed. It states that the other things remaining constant, that we call as ceteris paribus, when the price of the commodity rises, the demand for a product falls. That is, the price of a commodity falls, the demand for the commodity rises. That is, demand for a product is inversely proportional to its price. So it is very obvious in nature, when the price of some commodity increases, then definitely the demand will come down. That is, dx is equal to function of px, or it can also be written in a linear form, linear equation, that is dx is equal to a minus bpx, where a is constant and b always will be greater than 0. In this linear demand function, the intercept a and is a constant and represents the level of demand when price is 0. So the same has been given here. So we will be expressing that in different forms between the two variables, that is price and quantity. So at a given price, what is the quantity of a commodity purchased? So that we will be expressing graphically or in a tabular form. So here we have uh, to apply this law of demand, certain assumptions need to be made. Their income level should remain constant, taste of the buyer should not alter, then prices of other goods should remain constant, no new substitute for the commodity should be there, and price rise in future should not be expected, and advertising expenditure should remain the same. So under these conditions we can satisfy law of demand, and again we have certain exceptions to this law of demand. There are apprehensions about the future prices, status goods, given goods, Veblen goods, like that. This we will be discussing in the next slide. And what is the reason behind the law of demand is because of price effect and because of substitution effect. So that is switching over pattern of the consumers, income effect, then law of diminishing marginal utility. So such demand function, when it is being expressed in a tabular form or when it is written in a tabular form, that we call as demand schedule, and the same when written in graphical form, it is called as demand curve. A list of tabular statement of the different combinations of price and quantity demanded of a commodity is known as demand schedule of the commodity. Demand curve for a firm is achieved by the horizontal summation of individual demand curves and that of industry by adding the demand curves of all the firms. Suppose of a single firm we can write, suppose if we want to plot the same for different businesses in a market, so if we write that, that is called as demand curve. This is demand schedule, tabular expression, and graphical expression is demand curve. Now let us discuss again another important concept under law of demand. It is exceptions to law of demand. Here we have certain exceptions like given goods, snob appeal, demonstration effect, future expectation of prices, insignificant proportion of income spent, then goods with no substitutes. That is, certain commodity has to be purchased at different conditions, like whatever may be the price of that, say for example rice, all staple foods, the milk or salt, we will be buying that, so without looking at its price. So that is an exception to that. And again, so while buying some status goods, no, we won't be looking at the price, so then it becomes an exception. And switching over pattern of the buyers also is an exception, like that. So these are certain exceptions where law of demand is not applied. Then coming to supply, just like demand indicates the willingness of a purchaser, in the same way supply also indicates the willingness of a purchaser. That is, supply means the willingness of the firm to sell a particular commodity. That is, supply indicates the quantity of good or service that the seller is willing and able to provide at a given price at a given point of time, by keeping other things constant. In the same way as we discussed the demand concept, here we will be discussing the supply. So that is willingness expressed by a firm to sell its commodity. And here too we have the determinants like price of the commodity, cost, state of technology, and number of firms in the market, government policies. So in the same way we can write the supply function as the price, as by keeping price as price of the product as px, cost of the production in terms of by adding, so all the total cost of production including wages, interest, rent, and prices of raw material, that is as C, state of technology T, government policies regarding taxes and subsidies as G, and other factors like number of competitors firms as N. We can write supply function as Sx is equal to function of Px, C, T, G, and N, or simply S is equal to, where usually the price will be the determinant factor for any of the economical function. So always we consider price to estimate or to analyze the demand or supply of a commodity. It is a linear expression as Q is quantity supplied, quantity of the commodity supplied is equal to C plus dP, that is C is constant and always the demand, no, so for that will always be greater than 0. And here also we have law of supply. It states that the other things remaining the same, the higher of the price of a commodity, the greater is the quantity supplied. That is, price of the product is revenue to the supplier. Therefore, higher price means greater revenue to the supplier, and hence greater is the incentive to supply. At the same time, higher profits also attract new firms to market. Sometimes the market, it may attain, or a certain commodity attain equilibrium where we see a demand is equal to a supply, that we call as equilibrium status. And looking at the supply function, we can draw the supply function as supply schedule and supply curve. Supply schedule is the tabular representation of the different determinants of supply, that is mainly we consider price and the quantity of particular commodity produced, price versus the quantity of some commodity produced. When we express that, we call as demand, that is supply schedule, and the graphical representation of the same as supply curve. Market equilibrium, it is a condition or status where we try to strike an equilibrium price where the players, that is the consumers on one hand and on the producers on the other hand, are satisfied, where some commodity produced by a producer will be consumed equally. Whatever number has been produced will be consumed by the consumers, means the supply will be equal to demand. So such state we call as market equilibrium. Now let us discuss the next important concept under demand, that is elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand measures the degree of responsiveness of a quantity demanded of a commodity to a given change in any of the independent variables that influence demand for the commodity. That is, mathematically it means the percentage change in quantity demanded of a commodity to the percentage change in any of the, that is, independent variables that determine demand for the commodity. So elasticity, the meaning of that refers to response or responsiveness of a buyer or a consumer towards a product. So that we call as elasticity. Here we have different types of elasticity. There can be many types of elasticity of demand as the number of determinants of demand. However, we will restrict ourselves to only 4 different types. They are price elasticity, income elasticity, then advertising elasticity, then cross elasticity. Now coming to the first type of elasticity of demand, that is price elasticity. Price elasticity of demand measures the proportionate change in quantity demanded of a commodity to a given change in the price. That is, it measures the degree of elasticity. Here we have different types as perfectly elastic, highly elastic demand, unitary elastic demand, relatively inelastic, and perfectly inelastic. So all these types has to be drawn in a table form or with an example, or graphically we have to represent. Where we use different methods to measure elasticity, the ratio method, arc elasticity, and total outlay method. And the determinants of price elasticity are nature of commodity, availability of proximity of substitutes, alternate uses of commodity, proportion of income spent on the commodity, time, durability of commodity, items of addiction. And the next concept is importance. So next we will be discussing about elasticity of supply.